Hi, welcome to Strategy, Leadership, and Impact with your host, Blake Repine.
Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode or another video, depending on whether or not you're listening or watching. As a lot of you would know, I've recently moved the channel onto YouTube. I did look at putting all the previous podcasts onto YouTube, but wasn't quite what I wanted because all the previous episodes were actually just audio only and they weren't getting very many views, and just a couple videos I've already uploaded to the YouTube channel has gotten a number of views already. So I'll keep building that, and of course you can decide which platform you want to watch or listen on, either as a podcast or as a video, so up to you. So this topic for this episode, really want to talk about challenges and things that you might find as a new leader or someone who's new to leadership. Again, leadership isn't about a position, it's about a mindset and the things you do, but it also could be about the position that you're in. So a position doesn't make us a leader. The attributes of the leader is what makes us the leader. But there's some challenges if you're new to leadership or finding yourself more and more stepping up as a leader that you might encounter. And I'll talk about some of these and some different strategies toward the end around how you can actually overcome some of these or just get better at them. And some of these challenges will vary depending on whether or not you're moving up the ranks within your current organization, or if you've moved out of the organization to a new organization and taken on a leadership role. So the first one, of course, which is pretty big, is developing that leader mindset. So the leader mindset, you're no longer doing work for yourself. You're actually empowering others to do work for you, but not necessarily your work, but to do work within their areas. And that takes a shift from actually working on the things that you work on all the time and solely being responsible for that, but now being responsible for the things that your team does and those you're leading do, and how do you empower them so they can be successful in the role. The next one is credibility and trust. As a new leader, you have no track record. You have no experience, so you haven't built credibility yet. Depending on where you're at in your current organization, you may have developed trust with the team around you, but now the aspects of that trust and that credibility have changed a bit. And hopefully you do have the support of those people around you. So one thing you're going to have to work really hard on is developing credibility and trust. And I used to have someone say, or someone told me once, don't work or don't demand respect. Respect is given. Don't expect your team to respect you. But what you want to do is build credibility and trust with your team. So credibility in your actions and your skills, but also trust in your decision making and actually what you're doing and you as a person, your ethics and your morals. That goes a long way to developing respect. So once they have that, you've built that credibility and they have that trust in you, they're going to respect you. Relationships and authority is another challenge. So oftentimes when you're promoted into a leadership position, particularly within the same organization, you've now moved out of your peer group. And some people can find that very difficult because now you have authority over the people that you used to be peers with, and the relationship dynamics change. And you hope that your friends and your peers actually have enough intelligence, enough respect for you that they recognize now that that relationship, particularly in the work environment, has changed, and that the authority dynamics have changed too. And sometimes people, they still want to be mates and they still want to be best friends with people and they want to be liked. Well, now it's not about that anymore. You can be likable, but still carry yourself with that air of the leader. The next one will be decision making under pressure. People are going to be coming to you more and more now to make decisions, and they're going to expect you to make decisions fairly quickly. And you need to, as quick as you can. So if you need to gather more information, get background, whatever it is to make that decision, you need to do it. But they're going to expect you to make the decision fairly quickly because your decision could be holding up their work. So you're standing in between them and success. So you want to make good decisions, and you might not always make good decisions. You might make bad decisions, and we all do. We all make mistakes, but as long as we're analyzing those so we can improve our decision-making ability as time goes on, and by doing that too, we actually go back to developing that credibility. So people are going to expect you to do that very quickly, make those decisions really quickly, where previously they probably didn't expect you to. And there's the next two, I've kind of combined them together. So managing conflict and giving feedback. A lot of a leader's time is spent managing conflict, whether it be conflict within the work environment, conflict with vendors and suppliers, contractors, customers, clients, whatever. You're potentially going to be doing that because everybody's going to be coming to you to solve the conflict. It might not be conflict between people. It could be conflict between two competing processes. You don't know what the conflict's going to be, but that's going to come up. And now you're going to be the one that's going to be expected to solve the issues within the conflict or smooth over the conflict, putting out the spot fires in the workplace. And then giving feedback. Some people are very uncomfortable with this, and if you're not used to it, it's going to take a bit of getting used to. Sometimes whenever that feedback is critical or negative, or can be viewed as a negative, it can be very difficult to deliver, and how you deliver it can make a big difference in actually how you form that relationship with your team and how your team views you. I've heard people previously say, oh, I'm just going to be straightforward and give it to them. And sometimes they deliver stuff really harsh, and like, well, that's what they had to hear. But you can put people off like that, and they're not going to want to work for you if you're that abrupt. So I'm not saying you have to sugarcoat everything, because sometimes you can't or you shouldn't, but you have to deliver things in a tactful way so that it's constructive. So you're not there to belittle people or put them down. You're there to actually give feedback to help develop them and actually help them be successful. The next one is time management and prioritization around work. So no longer are you responsible for managing your own time and your own work. Now you actually have competing things. Like I said, people are going to be coming to you to make decisions. People are going to be bringing you work to review. People are going to be asking you for things. And you have to manage your time a bit more. You got to be really scrutinize your time, where you're spending your time, and to make sure that you're still able to accomplish your work as well as support your team who's trying to get work done too. You don't want to be the bottleneck in the funnel that's keeping them from being successful, but also too, you have to make sure you're spending the time on the things you need to spend time on so that you're successful getting your job done. Because being a leader isn't about getting other people to do your work for you. You actually have people in different areas, specialist areas and other things where you might not have skills, who are trying to get things done, but you're still going to have your workload that you have to get done to on top of that. Your work does change as you move up the chain, but you're still going to have certain requirements that you're going to have to accomplish. The next one that you're going to have to deal with the challenge is imposter syndrome. The majority of leaders have experienced this. I did a whole episode on imposter syndrome and the different types and how we can actually overcome it. But I believe it was around 80% of leaders experience imposter syndrome at one point in time. And it tends to be females actually experience imposter syndrome even more than males. And there's various factors as to why. But whenever this comes up, you need to be able to identify it fairly quickly and actually use some of those strategies that are available to overcome imposter syndrome. I've even experienced it myself. You go, oh, people aren't going to believe me what I say. I don't really know what I'm doing. They're going to find me out one day that I really don't know all this stuff. And even though no matter how much education you have, how much experience you have, you're always going to come up against it. And then the next one, of course, is aligning with organizational goals. And whenever I think about this, I think back to the NCO creed when I was in the U.S. Army, and the premise of a lot of my book, Soldier to Executive, is based on that, how I used the NCO creed to be successful and kind of set my own mantra in the corporate world to be successful. And one of the lines in there says, my two basic responsibilities will always remain uppermost in my mind: accomplishment of my mission and the welfare of my soldiers. And you can take the word soldiers and you can replace it with anything: my team, my staff, my whatever. And notice in there, it didn't say my own personal goals or achievements. So we have to align with the organizational goals. And as you move up the chain, you have to be aligned with that even more. Sometimes you have to set aside your own personal things, your own personal feelings, in order to support the organization. Now, if there's too wide of a gap there between the two, then you might need to relook, are you in the right organization or not? And that's difficult. So you're not there for yourself anymore. You're there for your team and those you lead, and you're there for the organization to support them to make sure that they can achieve their organizational goals and mission. And the last one I want to share with you is navigating ambiguity. I don't care how much education you have, sometimes or a lot of times, what you're going to experience day to day potentially is ambiguous. It's going to be things, you're going to come up against things that you've never experienced before, situations you've never been involved with before, different projects and stuff. They all run different. There are some similarities, but there's always going to be ambiguity about, well, how do I make a decision about this? How do I make sure we're on the right track? And that's difficult for a lot of people to deal with, that ambiguity. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how your decisions are necessarily going to affect the outcome, but you have to get started in order to get through it. And eventually you'll make sense of that ambiguity. So that's 10 things that you potentially will have challenges with as a new leader. And there's a couple different strategies that you can do, or different approaches you can do to try to navigate some of these challenges, or overcome some of these challenges. The first one is find you a mentor. We've all experienced people that have great leadership abilities, or people that are in positions that we attain to be in. Talk to them, ask them for advice. Whenever you come up against different situations, how did you do this? Someone you can bounce the ideas off of. Again, continue learning and developing. Look for opportunities, whether it's opportunities to work on certain projects or initiatives within your organization, whether it's opportunities to go join a professional organization, a peak body, and where they share things that people have come up against and how they solved it. Develop your own little group within your own professional realm, so to speak, or your own networks within your networks, but always continue developing. And one of the best ways you can do this is actually put yourself into situations that are going to really challenge your leadership. Another one is communicate, and communicate consistently and all the time, and let people know, look, I'm having this challenge right now. This is how I think I'm going to overcome it. And that's good. Sometimes they'll give you feedback, which is another method. So ask for feedback. Ask people, how well do you think that went? Analyze. Do your little after action reviews when you've done something. Actually analyze your decisions and what you've done and say, well, was it effective? I know there's been times where at the time I thought I was making the right leadership decision, and it turns out, at reviewing it later, go, that was horrible. I really messed that up. It could have been a lot worse. But every time I've done that, I've learned from it. And even whenever I've made a decision that went really well, and you go, well, that worked. Wow. You kind of surprise yourself. But look back at that and thought, well, why did it go well? What are the things that I did, the decisions that were made, or the dynamics within it that actually made it be a success? So you got to analyze your failures. I wouldn't say failure, your learning points and your successes as well, to make sure that you're constantly developing your leadership skills. And the more you focus on that self-reflection, that development, the better leader you're going to be in the long run. So thank you very much for stopping by, and can't wait to talk to you again soon.